whoever is in that birth experience or that birth room with you, like have them believe in you. Because if you are going to get to a point where maybe you're doubting for 1 minute, you need that person to step up, whether it's your birth partner, your nurse, your doula, or whoever else is there. They need to look you in the eyes and say, you can do this. And that makes all the difference. And research proves that. Like my doula training, they're like, continuous support is the thing that really matters. The woman, there's this myth that you like forget your births. I remember I could tell you every one of my 3 birth stories pretty accurately right now if we had the time. So like the myth that you're going to forget everything that happens, that's not true. So get yourself a good support system in that room because it matters what happens. It matters how you're talked to. It matters how you're supported.
All right, welcome to the podcast this week. And with me, I have Amy Kiefer, and she is part of Expecting and Empowered. She is a registered nurse, doula, and personal trainer. Amy Kiefer has been able to help thousands of women to avoid the common aches and pains associated with pregnancy and teach women across the globe how to heal safely postpartum, which I feel like is what every mom would want. She's been able to marry her personal passion for motherhood and fitness with education to serve women through Expecting Empowered on Instagram, the podcast, and the Expecting and Empowered home workout app, which I am going to give you all of the links to in the show notes so that you can connect with her and check out all of her good stuff that she has. But with that, Amy, will you take a moment, introduce yourself a little bit more than what I said in the intro? Talk to me about your kids and your family and the background, how Expecting and Empowered came to be. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, Stephanie, thank you so much for that introduction. I am so glad to be here. I know you were over on our podcast too, and that was a fantastic episode. So you and us are on a similar mission. I own Expecting and Empowered with my sister, Crystal. So some people do not know that we are sisters. We are only 18 months apart. She is my older sister, and she is a physical therapist. So when Crystal and I went through pregnancy ourselves, which happened to be at the same time for our first children, we just realized what a toll it took on our bodies. So pregnancy, we're like, this is a lot. And both of us had the training. We already had prenatal certifications. We were both personal trainers. She went on to be a physical therapist. So even with the training and the knowledge, we thought that it was hard to modify our workouts. You know, we had both been really active women kind of, since high school. And so we went through that experience. And then what comes after that? Postpartum. And I don't think postpartum gets enough light for how hard it is when it comes to recovery. Because now all of a sudden there's this baby and the baby gets a lot of attention. I mean, they're so cute and people want to come over and see them. And what doesn't get talked about as much is the recovery process that the mom has to go through. So her and I were talking and we're texting and we're saying like, man, this is hard for us. Imagine if we didn't have the training and the knowledge that we have. Imagine if you are a mom sitting there and you don't have that. And we saw what was currently available and we thought, you know what? I think we can do better than this. And I think at the end of the day, it's got to be a lot easier. Otherwise, women are not going to have the time to do this. We think it has to be able to be done at home. Otherwise, women are not going to be able to do this. We just think it needs to be easier. So we set out to do that. That's 8 years ago now, which I can hardly believe. It's kind of like watching your children grow up. Like it goes so much faster than you could even believe. And I will give my sister absolute credit for being kind of ahead of the times because 8 years ago, people were not dressing up in vagina and vulva costumes, and she was. Like we were pushing the limits of what you could talk about on Instagram. A lot of people have followed suit. She was one of the first. To the point where people are like, I don't know if a physical therapist should be talking like this or presenting like this. And like I said, now there's a bunch of people doing it. We were one of the first. And I welcome everyone else because the more women that we can have educating, just like you're doing too, the more women we can have educating when it comes to birth, when it comes to labor and delivery, when it comes to postpartum, when it comes to pregnancy, the better. Because the goal for all of us should be to get women the information they need when they're going into these huge life-changing seasons. So our passion has remained the same. We keep getting more educated, getting more experience, and helping more women. And it has just been the blessing of our lives. We never set out to do this, but now we just can't stop.
100%. Don't you feel like that? I don't know. Women are called to this work. All these women that are here helping other women. It's like, that was not on my, sometimes it is, but like, that was not on my list in high school of things that I plan to do with my life. But then it's like, you know what? We've got work to do. You see the need and you're like, here we are. So yeah, I love that you guys are doing that. And I actually didn't know that you guys were sisters. So I'm glad that you said that. And how fun. 18 months apart and you got to have your first babies together. I think that's such a special, that's such a neat story. I love that so much. Do you guys live near each other then too?
Yeah, so we're about an hour apart in Wisconsin. So not far at all. Yeah.
That's awesome. Very cool. All right. Well, let's dive into some of what we're going to talk about today. I want to start with exercise. And I don't want this to just be the like boring conversation that all the moms normally hear about exercise. You know, I'd love to dive into some of the nitty gritty. And since you are a personal trainer and you have that, like, I'm a registered nurse and I'm a doula, I feel like you are the whole package when it comes to talking about this kind of stuff. So let's dive into it. What does pregnancy really do for us? Or what does exercise really look like once we are pregnant? And I kind of want to, if we can like go back just a second there too, we are told, right? And we know we have the information now that when we exercise prior to pregnancy, it's such a benefit for us. And then when we pull that into pregnancy, it's so great too. Can you kind of talk about that for a moment? And then whatever you want to say about pregnancy and exercise, let's go into that.
Yeah. Absolutely. So one thing that I'm really passionate about, and it's a misconception and it still gets spread by like everyone, is that if you didn't exercise prior to pregnancy, you can't exercise during pregnancy. And what we know now is that is just really outdated information. In fact, we have people that are starting because what we know is some women really their first trimester is just so hard on them and it is near impossible for them to exercise. She would still do so much better if she started activity in her second or even late into her second trimester than staying sedentary her whole pregnancy. This is safe, it is effective, and it is proven that it is going to be so much better for you and your baby than being sedentary. So we want to spread the good word that exercise has so many benefits to women, whether it's pre-pregnancy, pregnancy, and beyond. And one thing that I really like to highlight, and I also think gets really missed in this conversation, is how important it is to people's mental health. So what we know about pregnancy is that it is a time where worry can creep up, anxiety can creep up. It is just a time that is hard on us as women. And what exercise does is it really raises our self-esteem. It releases something that are nicknamed the feel-good endorphins. And so what our customers in our community tell us all the time is how much better they feel when they are exercising. So that is something to keep in mind, like body image. We're not going to sit here and pretend that pregnancy, a time where the goal is that you're going to continue to grow the entire time that you're pregnant. That might be a very different feeling, especially maybe the first time that you're going through it. That could bring up some feelings for you. But if you are exercising and you are feeling like you are moving your body and taking care of yourself, that is going to likely, and research shows, boost your confidence and your self-esteem. It also lessens anxiety and depression. It's actually one of the first things that a mental health therapist would recommend. So I really like to brand exercise in a different way to women as something that we're not just doing it to look a certain way. Like I think a lot of us are really past that. It's something that we want to do because we know that motherhood, I know that you have a lot of kids too, it's a very physical task. So I'm talking about pregnancy itself. We are gaining this weight, especially on the front of our bodies. And if we don't have muscle to hold ourselves upright and balance ourselves out, you're going to run into a lot of those aches and pains. We hear from pregnant women, the back aches, the sciatica pain, the pubic symphysis pain. We hear all of this. And what people don't know is there are things that you can do to at least lessen that pain. And what that looks like is having a strong enough body to go through this process. Now, I know you talk a lot about labor and delivery, and what you know is that that also is a very physical process to go through. No matter which way you're going through it, you do need a certain amount of endurance to go through that. Now, let's talk about postpartum. What do you have to do in postpartum? You're constantly picking up a baby. You're constantly leaning forward, bending forward, picking up your car seat, picking up your stroller, picking up, the groceries. Like motherhood and life is just a physical sport. And so what we try to tell women is you need a certain amount of muscle to keep up with that. We're not looking to do anything crazy. We just need like that baseline amount of muscle to just keep up with our lives. And so that's what our programs really aim to do, is to have that muscle on you so that you don't have those aches and pains that can come along with these seasons and that you hear so much about. And the last thing I'll say is we really try our best to find people in their first pregnancy. But what can happen is that, we might miss them. And then the second pregnancy, they're like, I cannot go through what I went through the first time. They had a lot of aches and pains. It was really hard on them. But now they have a toddler and they're going to be pregnant and they're like, I have to do something differently. They find our program, they follow it, and they're like, I cannot tell you the difference that this made. Just by doing, 3 workouts a week, it makes all the difference. And so we've gotten that feedback so many times that we're like, we just wish we could, put it on a billboard and get it out there, because it makes such a difference in your mental health and your physical health, which are so connected. Because if you have aches and pains and you have these shooting pains all throughout the day, it's really hard to feel good. So it's all really connected. And I think we've got to not have the bar so high, because I think a lot of women are like, I got to go to this hour-long workout class and, I got to do this, this, and this. And we're like, wait, what if at home you just worked out for a half hour? Like, would that feel better? So that's who we are, and that's what we try to do.
I love that. I can speak to the mental part of that 100%. Whether I am pregnant or not, obviously getting outside, drinking enough water, being in the sun and moving my body, those things will keep me more grounded than anything else. I mean that, and if I'm being honest, like spirituality, right? Like, am I praying in the morning? Am I reading scriptures? Those are things for me that are super important. And so when you're talking about this, I'm like, yes. And I think it's so important that you said, it doesn't have to be an hour-long workout and we're doing that 5 days a week. And if you don't do that, you're not going to see results or you're not going to feel good, because that's not true. That's totally not true. And so you saying something like, how does a half-hour workout 3 days a week sound? I mean, that's doable. I feel like everybody listening can be like, I think I can handle that. And knowing that that small amount will make a huge difference, I think is awesome. So I love everything that you just shared.
Well, I love what you said too, because I'm like, we're a company that we're like, go for a walk outside for 10 minutes. Like maybe that's your start. Fill up your water bottle. Like these are things that we all know that we should do. And maybe your first step is that. Like maybe you're the woman that honestly just can't get herself to fill up her water bottle, and that's your step one. And I totally respect that. And we are cheering for you to do that. You know, we can't all move a mountain. Sometimes our very first step is I'm just going to take a 10-minute walk outside and I'm going to make sure I fill up my water bottle today.
Yeah, that's huge. And then when you do those baby steps, all of a sudden you build upon, the trust for your body and your mental health and your strength and all of that. And you're like, actually, I do want to do a little more. Actually, it feels better to do a little more. And so you keep going. So yes, that's awesome. I'm curious, maybe you can talk about this, but what kind of exercises do you guys talk about in the program, and does that go by different trimesters, or maybe talk about the program for a minute? I was going to do that at the end, but I'm curious about how you guys run that.
Yeah. So a few years ago, we became an app. Our customers were asking for it. They're like, like we had old PDFs, and shout out to the customers that found us in those days because you helped us become what we are. But now it's a very easy to follow app. It'll ask you a couple questions in the beginning, and then it'll put you exactly where you need to be. So say you find us, you're 14 weeks pregnant, it will take you to the exact spot that you are supposed to be, and then you just have to follow it. And then there will be a instructor that is doing exactly what you're supposed to do. So she is just showing you exactly what to do. She's not like talking to you, she's just demonstrating. So there's no additional mental load for you. It's monkey see, monkey do. You're just doing exactly what she's doing, and then you press next. We also, because of a lot of customer feedback, we added a pause button. So we know that kids interrupt workouts. You might have 15 minutes to work out and then you've got to run. And we always tell our customers in our community, we're like, 15 minutes is awesome. Like if you have 15 minutes and you want to pause and then you can't come back to that workout until 4 hours later or the next day, we love that. Like we think that that is enough and you are doing great. So we added the pause button for our customers. But yeah, the workout takes you through exactly what you need to do. The app will take you wherever you need to be. It'll plunk you right into the workout where you need to be based on those questions you fill out. It's super easy to use. And then it's pregnancy safe and postpartum safe. So it's going to put you exactly where you need to be. And the reason we made it is because we think that what keeps a lot of pregnant women from working out is just sitting there wondering, like, is this safe for me? We wanted to completely eliminate that question. It is safe. These workouts are safe for you, so you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, that's perfect. And I agree. That is one of the questions I always had when working out. Is this safe? And is this safe at this part of pregnancy? And it does change as your belly grows, and maybe you need less weight because you got some weight in the front or whatever. So I think that's awesome. Will you talk a little bit about strength training? I've talked about this a little. I want to hear from a personal trainer. Talk to me about some of the misconceptions of strength training during pregnancy, maybe some of those things that you can debunk for us.
I could talk about strength training for like 5 hours. Like I've become obsessed with strength training. My degree is in exercise science. I'm a lifelong learner. I have just ingested so much strength training information throughout my life. So I am like obsessed with strength training. And I think where a lot of women get confused or where they miss the mark, I think one big misconception, I don't think people worry about it as much during pregnancy, is that they think that strength training might make them bulky, or that they're going to like gain a bunch of muscle and not like their appearance. What we know from the research is that that is very, very hard for a woman to do because we don't have as much testosterone as our male counterparts. So we would not be able to naturally have that much muscle unless you were eating a ton of protein and on a really intense program and lifting a really heavy load. So let's start right there, is like, that is just a really easy to debunk myth about strength training that still holds, unfortunately, a lot of women up. The second thing I will say is something that a lot of women miss the boat on is the benefit of how good strength training is during this season, but then beyond. So if we can get ourselves into understanding how to strength training there's lifelong benefits. It's actually the best thing that you can do for your body during the aging process. So I love to think about doing it during every season of your life, pregnancy being one of them. So if you've never strength trained before, I also think that people think it's really confusing. It's hard to learn. It's going to be like really arduous. It's like, okay, here's an app that just shows you exactly what to do, and you can just copy the model, and it just makes it as simple as it can be. And I also like to tell people, I'm not going to lie, like the first couple workouts, yeah, you're going to get really sore if you've never done it before. Like take it easy on your weights, meaning don't go with really heavy weights right away because your body is going to take a little bit to adjust to these new exercises if they're new to you. So let's get that straight. Like you will get sore and that's okay. That's part of the process. Your body can gain strength and muscle really pretty fast. It takes 4 to 8 weeks to start to get stronger. What's really cool about brand new strength training people is that it actually feels faster because you're just learning the exercises. So that works a little bit faster for you guys versus if you've been strength training a long time, to go up in weights takes you a little bit longer. So, but aging gracefully and going through the seasons of life gracefully is something that I really think about. And I think that it's one of the coolest parts of strength training. Healthy bones for women. Okay, this is huge in pregnancy, and I'll explain why. So, during pregnancy, we really need to be nourishing ourselves. I'm sure you've probably done episodes on this in the past. We really need to be eating enough. If we're not eating enough, the baby is going to get what the baby needs. And sometimes that even comes from our bones. Okay, we need to have really healthy bones. What is a good way to ensure that our bones are healthy? Strength training. Strength training really helps to keep our bone density high. So that's another reason, like you see women or men for that matter, when they're older, be really hunched over or break bones really easily. That's something that we're trying to prevent. That starts now. Like if you should really be strength training in these ages to help yourself out later down the road. But like I said, it's also right now during pregnancy to prevent those aches and pains that I've already listed. And you guys know about if you're pregnant, you've heard of lightning crotch, you've heard of sciatica, you've heard of back pain. These are the things that can happen if your body doesn't have enough muscle and balance in it. So that's the reason that you really want to strength train.
Yeah, that was an excellent answer to strength training. And yes, I love kind of debunking that along the way. I've said it maybe a couple of times on my podcast, but I'm like, women are strong. Since when can you not lift some weights and, do some heavier squats? I don't know. I even now, and I didn't do a ton of that during pregnancy, but I did with my second and third. I did absolutely use weights. It was a huge difference. I felt so much better. And like you said, mentally and physically. So yes, I'm all about that. And I love that more and more people are given the go for all these women to do that. Okay. As someone who has had 3 unmedicated births and is also a doula, what do you recommend for women to do in order to prepare for labor in addition to exercise?
Okay, so I love this question. So that was just a personal goal of mine. I think that birth in many ways is beautiful. However, all of you want to birth is great by me. But for me, I was really interested in trying to go unmedicated. So I knew that knowledge is power. And so I really tried to educate myself on what the birth process was like. And so even though, especially before my first birth, I was a little bit nervous about what that was going to be like, I decided to go all in. I was watching documentaries. This one is getting really old by now, but The Business of Being Born. I watched that documentary. I watched the second documentary to that documentary. I was on YouTube watching like random women give birth. Like I just wanted to see the process of it. This was 2016, my first birth. So this was like in the blogging era. So I would just type in on Pinterest, like unmedicated births, natural births. And then I would read other people's experience with that and their tips. So I was really all in on like, okay, I know other women have done this. And so I think that I could do this. Like, let me just lay the foundation and see what other people's experience is. I thought it was really important to understand the process of it. So whether someone is going to take a course from you or just like really get to know how the process is going to look. And I'll just tell this quick story. During my first birth, I was like really kind of cruising through. I was feeling really good about it. And then all of a sudden, when I hit transition, which I know now I was hitting transition, but at the time I didn't, it was just everything was changing. Everything was getting way more intense. And I was in the bathtub. My nurse, Anna, I still remember her name. She was like, I think you should maybe try, like, why don't we just try to get in the water? And I was like, I don't know. I don't really like to be hot. I don't really want to be wet. Like, I don't know. She's like, I think you should just try it, Amy. And I was like, okay. And so I get in the water. And like that really did help me. And I'm really thankful that she suggested that. But still, I hit this next time where I just felt a little panicky. And I looked her and I said, I'm scared. And she said, Amy, you are doing amazing. You're doing everything that you need to do. Like you've got this. And it was just that support from my nurse that got me through that part where I was vulnerable and I was saying like, I'm scared. And she was like, you're doing amazing. Like you're doing everything that you need to do. She wasn't like, I'm going to get you pain medication or like, she wasn't scared. She was like, you're doing perfect. Like you're doing exactly what you need to do. We're okay. And my husband was right there too. And so I'll just forever be grateful that I had that nurse and that she gave me that affirmation right when I needed it. And then once she said that, I never looked back. I just believed her that I was doing everything I needed to do. And once I got through that first birth, after that, I had all the confidence in the world that I could do the next two. And whatever came up during those births, you know, because I'm not going to say like the next two were easy. And there was never like a moment in those births where things didn't get hard. But once you have that belief in yourself, you just feel like you can do it. So my advice would be whoever is in that birth experience or that birth room with you, like have them believe in you. Because if you are going to get to a point where maybe you're doubting for 1 minute, you need that person to step up, whether it's your birth partner, your nurse, your doula, or whoever else is there. They need to look you in the eyes and say, you can do this. And that makes all the difference. And research proves that. Like my doula training, they're like, continuous support is the thing that really matters. The woman, there's this myth that you like forget your births. I remember I could tell you every one of my 3 birth stories pretty accurately right now if we had the time. So like the myth that you're going to forget everything that happens, that's not true. So get yourself a good support system in that room because it matters what happens. It matters how you're talked to. It matters how you're supported.
I think that might be some of the best advice ever. And I feel like that reinforces everything that I say right here. So for those of you who are listening today, take heed of what she just said. It is huge. And I can attest to that as well with that third baby and my home birth and feeling like, oh my gosh, am I going to be able to complete this task? And the only thing that was happening around me was a ton of support. that was such a 180 from what happened to me in the hospital. I love that you had this experience in the hospital, that you had good people surrounding you, that you had a good support system, because all it takes is somebody being really positive and trusting in you for you to be like, okay, yeah, I do have this. But the opposite can happen too. And so since you are in such a vulnerable space, who you have there really does matter. So thank you for sharing
Like, did
that.
you
That's
see
great.
my tears were welling up just like thinking of feeling that supported. And I had a really close friend give birth in the exact same hospital and have the opposite experience. She, we were reflecting back on her birth and she's like, I just needed one person to say like, you've got this, because she came in and she was basically like fully dilated and she was just like out of control because it's a very intense moment. And she's like, I just needed one person to tell me I could do it. And there
That's
wasn't someone there
so
that did
sad.
it.
Yeah.
So
No.
that matters.
It does. And like moms that are listening, tell dad that he can be that
Yeah.
person too. Like depending on
Right.
your situation, if you guys are all each other has, then he gets to be that person and he has to be that person. So that's really great. Are there coping strategies or movements that you recommend? And I feel like that really could draw on your like personal training side of things too, just understanding the mechanics of the body, as well as the doula stuff. And along with that, those coping strategies or movements, is there any preparation that happens during pregnancy, maybe that you even have women do in your app, but that is going to strengthen or lengthen certain parts of our bodies to be prepared for those movements?
Yeah, it's coming straight to my mind, and I should send over one of our most popular freebies that we give out for free. Is during labor, there's just certain positions that we can put our body in that help the baby progress. So, a lot of people just don't know that you can change positions. And this honestly, same goes if you get an epidural, which is a very common misconception that if you get an epidural, a lot of people think that you just lay there and you don't do anything. But you can really move side to side, use a peanut ball. Like there's a bunch of things that you can do to help the baby continue to progress down, which is what we all want. We want the baby to continue to come down. So, same thing if you don't have an epidural and you're able to be on your feet, you want to continue to move around because it's going to help the baby get into the position we need the baby in to be able to come out. So for me, I'm a very, very active laborer. It really helps me to cope with the pain and work through my contractions, especially during my first labor. I was at the countertop and I was doing like a fourth squat. Like during every contraction, I would close my eyes. I would have really deep breathing. Every contraction, I was just like at that counter working through. So, like, you're going to find that most women start to do a labor ritual, and it's not usually something that's planned out. Like you just start doing something to cope and you continue to do it through a phase of your labor. And so what happens though is once you go to the next stage of labor, that's when it maybe changes. Maybe it stops working, like my counter squatting at transition stopped working. And that's when she said, okay, I think we need to try the tub because that's not working anymore. Like, let's get you into the tub and see if that helps with pain relief. I shout from the rooftops if the place where you're giving birth offers water. I found it and research finds it to be highly effective to help with pain. So in my next two births, I was in the tub when I felt like I wasn't coping as well outside the tub. I would always get in the tub and always do transition in the tub. So I think that is a great thing to do. But yeah, you're going to figure out like how you want to move, while you're laboring, and I can send that freebie over, but there's a lot of things that you can do that are going to help you cope with pain, but also they help your baby to come down. And isn't it so cool that it's just kind of a natural thing that women do anyways? And that's like how babies have been coming out forever, but we just automate. Like I didn't know that squatting at a countertop might be helpful. I just started doing it. But yeah, if you need some ideas, we definitely have those available.
All right. These next couple questions. So that was awesome. And thank you. And I feel like we followed that perfectly into all of your like doula stuff and personal experience and all of that. But I do have a couple of questions, some that I have, and then some that have come from our Instagram followers or email. So if you have a moment, I'd love to ask you just a few of those.
Yeah.
But one had to do with hemorrhoids. And they said, because I know this is a common thing for moms, and actually I get this question because one of the things that I recommend is a deep seated squat for an extended period of time if you can. However, if you have hemorrhoids, that might not be super helpful. So for some exercises where moms do end up putting a little bit more pressure on the perineum, and maybe you recommend that they don't do that at all, what are your recommendations for them?
Oh, that's a really good question. You know, as my sister always teaches, and sometimes what people don't know about hemorrhoids is it really is a pressure problem. And so, what is really important to, I would say, go back and learn is diaphragmatic breathing. And we have that information over at Expecting and Empowered, because what happens when you have hemorrhoids is you get really scared to go to the bathroom. That makes perfect sense. You get really scared to get into these different positions, and then you kind of like tense up and hold your breath, which actually makes the problem worse, unfortunately. And so if you can really start to learn how to breathe properly, which you're probably like, Amy, I know how to breathe, but it's different. It's really diaphragmatic breathing. It's 360 breathing. It's making sure your entire rib cage expands. So I'm going to say, like, really making sure that you're breathing properly, because if you are putting your body into a position where it feels like you're scared that you're going to make your hemorrhoid pain worse, I'm guessing you're tensing up and you're making your hemorrhoids hurt worse. And so we've got to make sure that you're able to kind of like breathe through that. But I would actually be really interested in asking my sister this question, the physical therapist, and seeing if she would be like, absolutely not, do not squat. So I'm going to like defer and ask her afterwards, and then I can send you what she says, because I'm like, that's more of a question for her. But I would love to hear what she says. I'm super curious now.
I love that. So for those that are listening, check the email for that this week. I will make sure to put that answer in the email along with that. I love it.
Perfect.
I know when I took pelvic floor therapy, like she talked about, she's like, you can do squats, and I didn't have hemorrhoids. So this has nothing to do with hemorrhoids, just talking about the pressure that it puts on the pelvic floor. She's like, you can do squats, but you need to be breathing out instead of holding your breath, which is totally what I do. And that's totally what you just talked about. Yep. Yeah. So that like pressure that you're putting there, it makes perfect sense. For those who are listening, just so that you are aware, if you do have hemorrhoids and you are doing the deep seated squat that we do, you can put a yoga block or pillows behind you and pull your legs back. So you're still getting that deep stretch, and you don't have to be in an actual squat. So that is one thing that I recommend. I'd love to hear from your sister with other exercises where you're, squatting up and down and that kind of thing as well. Okay. What is an easy way to know that you're doing the right amount or too much? Like breathing patterns, energy, fatigue. Is there something that women can go off of to say, this is good for me, this is not? And does that change day by day?
Absolutely. So the in-exercise way that ACOG recommends for pregnant women is the talk test. So what that looks like, and I would do it out loud, I did it out loud when I was pregnant, is you say a couple sentences. And if you're not able to say a couple sentences in a row, like, okay, pretend you're talking to your friend, or maybe your friend is there. And if you're like, and you can't get a sentence out, you're probably doing too much. So what the standard used to be was heart rate. And so you might still hear people teaching on that. What we have found is that is not, it used to be 140 beats per minute. Research has now proven to be otherwise. So we're not going on that anymore, but we can go by what is called the talk test, which is what I just explained. So if you're not able to get 2 sentences out, I would say maybe it's time to back off a little bit. Now, as far as like your week to week, when I was pregnant, I was a registered nurse. And so I had to be on my feet all day, every day. It was hard to listen to my body to be like, is exercise going to be helpful for me or is it going to make me feel even worse? Like that is really a hard decision. I would say, like telling women to listen to their bodies, I think is really hard because I think a lot of people have a hard time doing that. But it's like sometimes I think deep down we know, like, do you feel like your fatigue is so real? And like it is more important to your body to take a rest day and to, go to sleep early and make sure you're taking care of yourself and that baby than it is to check a box. Like you have to learn starting in pregnancy and then into motherhood how to really say no. Like this is too much because what we don't want to do is get into postpartum depletion. And I've seen so many friends go through, not being able to listen to their body. And then you run into a ton more problems. So that one, there's not like the perfect test. But I do think most of us do know, like, I am beat. Like, I cannot do this today. That's a okay answer. And then it's like a 15-minute walk. Like, okay, you still want to move a little bit and you still want some fresh air. Take a easier workout.
Yeah, that I agree with that test. And I'm somebody, I think maybe because I'm tiny, I have like hamster heart, right? So like my beats are always really high. And I was always like, how am I doing too much right now? And then on the same token, I'd be like, I walked up the stairs, in my third trimester and I'm like, good luck getting at one sentence out. Like that was too rough.
Yeah,
so
yeah,
it's totally real.
One time I was talking on my cell phone to my dad and he's like, what are you doing? I was like, walking up a hill. That's it.
Oh, so funny. So real. Okay. One more was it's about stretching. Tell me a little bit about stretching and what you think would be good for moms to be doing maybe every day, or do you guys have stretches that you do pre-workout and post-workout included with the app? Like what do you think about stretching?
Yeah. Yeah. So especially during pregnancy and postpartum, it is important. And we have those baked into our app. So right before your workout, there are stretches because what we do know, like say you're 38 weeks pregnant, that's hugely important to get your body into some positions that are opening your pelvic floor and getting you ready for labor and delivery. So yeah, stretching is really important. And we've got those all inside of the app. We kind of wanted to make it like a one-stop shop so that you don't have to use your mental power or mental load at all, because really you're going through enough. And then one really cool thing that we added last year, and this is all included for anyone that has a subscription, is yoga. So we know that some days when you are feeling like, oh my gosh, I think my body's had enough, but I do feel like stretching would feel really good. We added some gentle flows, some restorative flows, pregnancy and postpartum, led by some instructors that we found that are certified and amazing. So we wanted to add those, and there's a variety of time. Like some are just 10 minutes because we knew that women just needed options for just those days where you want an easier. And there are some hard ones too. Like if you're postpartum and you want a 30-minute hard flow, like we've got that too. So we love stretching. They're all safe, and those are all inside the app too.
Awesome. Well, Amy is going to stick around with me after this episode for some extra questions, including some of your favorite tools to use, specific exercises for hip pain, and maybe even some postpartum and C-section safe exercise examples for us. But before we leave this episode, will you tell everybody where they can find you and how to connect with you?
Yeah, the good thing about being 8 years old is that we are expecting and empowered everywhere that you go. So our biggest platform is on Instagram. We also have our podcast, And I did bring a code with me. We actually give our best codes out on podcasts. So we made one for you. It's MEB for My Essential Birth, and that gets you 25% off the yearly subscription. So that's MEB, and you can use that at expectingangempowered.com.
Awesome. Thank you so much for including that for our listeners. Oh, thank you, Amy. You have been a dream to be here today and to just everything that you've said and all the wisdom that you've brought. I really appreciate you being here. So thank you so much.
Of course. Thank you so much for having me.